Good evening. I'm Lisa Broom with the CBC Evening News. In our top story tonight, Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley wants greater efforts made to facilitate Caribbean citizens and companies wanting to travel to do business. The matter was raised by Prime Minister Motley during the opening of the 9th Prime Ministerial Subcommittee meeting at the Lloyd Erskine Sandiford Centre. We have a report from Kish Marsengis.
For Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley, the presence of a number of Caribbean leaders in Barbados speaks to their commitment to the CSME. She says a greater level of confidence has been restored in CARICOM since the 39th Heads of Government meeting in Jamaica. Ms. Motley, who has lead responsibility for the CSME, says there are a number of projects before regional heads that require urgent attention. She believes the matter of free movement is one that can be remedied.
It is one that will make that definable difference in a direct way to those of our citizens doing business in each of our territories. We remain committed even as we do all of this, and even as we meet in special session of heads in Port of Spain later this year, we remain committed to being able to identify how best we can reach the single market in single domestic space in transport and a single domestic space in communications.
Ms. Motley remains confident a lot can be achieved by the region working together.
It is our duty to make it possible between these islands and these countries within CARICOM. I look forward to us also in this meeting being able to address in caucus some key strategic issues pertaining to security of our energy supplies, issues pertaining to resilience of our telecommunications, issues pertaining to how best we may assist one another in treating to this difficult hurricane period, recognizing that only just 1 year ago, too many of our countries, not just within CARICOM, but within the Caribbean, were exposed to the cruelest elements of nature.
Kish Marsengis, CBC News.
CARICOM Secretary General Ambassador Erwin LaRocque says the CSME remains the best option for sustainable development. He called on member states to act on agreed commitments and obligations.
The approved implementation plan sets out timeframes for so doing in the short, medium, and long terms. The efforts to fulfill these requirements will be a significant and positive signal that we mean business. The Council for Finance and Planning, COFAP, meeting here yesterday, agreed to a time frame to implement a number of elements of the single economy that would enhance the effective use and operation of the single market. The sessions today and yesterday are setting the stage for the special meeting of heads of government later this year, devoted solely to the CSME.
A single jurisdiction and a single registration for companies across the region may soon be established. This was the foremost of a few recommendations made when that Prime Ministerial Subcommittee of the CSME met today at the Lloyd Erskine Sandiford Centre. Prime Minister Motley says several initiatives were decided on, which she believes are of significant value, especially the single jurisdiction and single registration for companies.
We believe that this is necessary to boost investment and to reduce both the hurdles and the costs that many of our enterprises will face as they seek to do business across multiple jurisdictions. We agreed on the principle of mutual recognition with respect to companies incorporated in one member state being recognized in other member states. And this, of course, will help significantly in reducing those hurdles and costs.
Prime Minister Motley adds that the category of workers who may travel freely through the region must also be expanded.
Right now there are 10 categories, and we've agreed to recommend an 11th category of agricultural workers, primarily because we recognize the importance of being able to attain food security across the region, particularly in these difficult and turbulent times, and coming as we did last year after the realization of what the climate can do, what hurricanes can do, and now we see earthquakes to disrupt the whole production and distribution cycle. And we're conscious and sensitive to the fact that we have to be able to move the region closer to a level of food security. in ways that we've not perhaps been as assiduous about doing in recent times.
In other news now, the Anglican Church in Barbados has officially put the task of choosing a new bishop in the hands of the Regional House of Bishops. Confirmation of this from Diocesan Administrator Canon Wayne Isaacs, who tells Cbc News they sent a letter to the regional body recently. However, he could not give the date on which it was sent. Canon Isaacs says it's not normal practice for the House of Bishops to inform the local church of when it meets, so they are still in the dark as to whether any discussions have been held at that level on the matter yet. Well, that move came after the local synod failed to make a decision on either Dean of St. Michael's Cathedral, Dr. Jeffrey Gibson, or Rector of St. George Parish Church and Rural Dean of St. John, Reverend John Rogers. In that last meeting in late July, neither Dean Gibson nor Reverend Rogers gained the 2/3 majority of votes needed among the houses of laity or clergy to take the top spot. And Barbados will be seeking to capitalize on more than 50 years of diplomatic relations with Canada as the country moves to economic recovery. That's according to Minister in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Sandra Husbands. She was speaking yesterday following a meeting with Prime Minister Mia Motley and Canada's Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Development, Kamal Khera.
We're making great strides here in Barbados, but they're not enough. We definitely have to put more work into it to begin to understand the value that we bring to the entire process of life, and that we are able to see that there are opportunities that we need to seize and take the best advantage of and convert them into those opportunities that will help us to fulfill our purpose here on earth.
Canada's High Commissioner to Barbados, Marie Legault, says the discussion with Prime Minister Motley covered a number of issues, including Barbados's current economic position.
That is not just my opinion. There is significant evidence that shows that if you want to end poverty, you must empower women. If you want to build lasting peace, you must involve women. If you want to increase economic growth, you must invest in women. And that's why today I'm pleased to announce that Canada will contribute $4.8 million Canadian dollars over 5 years to strengthen women's organizations and movements across CARICOM countries.
Well, Banks Holdings Limited says it has notified both the Royal Barbados Police Force and the Child Care Board regarding a video which purports to show a young child consuming a Banks beer. In the video, which has gone viral, the boy is consuming the contents of the bottle in the presence of adults. Manager of Legal and Corporate Affairs at BHL, Sophia Alsop Cambridge, says they have notified the authorities and made it clear that such behavior will not be tolerated.
Banks Holdings Limited and its subsidiaries, which of course include the brewery, wish to reiterate that our alcoholic beverages should only be responsibly consumed by adults, i.e. persons who are over the age of 18 years old. We abhor and strongly condemn any abuse of our alcoholic beverages in any form, but particularly by underage persons, even if they're in the company of adults. This should never occur. We are at this point unaware of the identities of the persons who are involved in this incident. However, we have swiftly brought the matter to the attention of the state-run Child Protection Agency, the Child Care Board, and of course the Royal Barbados Police Force for further investigation.
4 depots of the Ministry of Transport, Works and Maintenance came under the spotlight yesterday. The Haggett's, Chance Hall, Jerusalem and Bagatelle depots were toured by Minister of Dr. William Duguid and Minister in that ministry, Peter Phillips. The tour was done to assess the working conditions of the officers as well as the work carried out by the depots. Now, although Minister Duguid recognized that the staff is working hard and doing their best, he acknowledged that, quote, there is still a long way to go in terms of appropriately positioning staff and getting not only the surroundings cleaned up, but also paying attention to the entire length and breadth of the road, end quote. Dr. Duguid indicated that there is still a lot of work to be done and an evaluation was therefore necessary to make the, quote, appropriate diagnosis for the appropriate treatment in terms of the depots. The tour also included a visit to the Speightstown bus terminal for an assessment of the availability of buses there. And starting next week, the ministry will begin a national cleanup of the island's highways and byways. In a statement released this afternoon, the ministry says this will include the removal of parked cars for sale on the highway, as this practice is in violation of the Road Traffic Act. Minister Dr. William Duguid is therefore asking all people who advertise vehicles by parking them on the highway to desist. According to him, these vehicles are a hazard to other road users, and this practice must be brought to an end. Owners of vehicles which are removed during this exercise will have to pay to reclaim them. The Barbados Workers Union plans to intensify its efforts to get better conditions for workers at the lower end of the scale, and they're starting with domestic workers. The Barbados Workers Union wants government to ratify the International Labour Organization's Convention on Decent Work for Domestic Workers. Not only that, it's also working on a set of resolutions to form the basis of legislation to protect those in the industry.
This is a category of workers that even if you come from overseas, another Caribbean country for instance, and have to be working as a domestic worker here, you shouldn't have to feel like a domestic slave because your passport is still being held, because the conditions you are working in are less than human.
That's the union's General Secretary Tony Moore, who's making it clear that domestic workers are not the only ones that need better conditions. She says they're focusing attention on gas station workers and security guards as well, some of whom are forced to work 60-hour weeks.
Regular hours or regular shift is a 12-hour shift, so that even if a worker, a security officer has been rostered for an 8-hour shift and is required to work 5 hours overtime is only paid after 60 hours, and is working so hard sometimes to get by. But what are you getting by with at the end of the day?
Ms. Moore was speaking over the weekend during the union's annual delegates conference, where 3 domestic workers were recognized for their contribution to the development of Barbados. A police officer in Guyana has been arrested. He failed an alcohol test which was administered after a fatal accident.
The report by the police that 23-year-old Kimo Anthony of East Rheinveld rode into the path of this police force vehicle on Saturday night, resulting in his death, is being disputed by his weeping mother. Saturday night on Nelson Mandela Public Road, the police constable had been driving this Guyana Police Force minibus, PVV 4652. The constable was reportedly east along the northern carriageway of Mandela Avenue when Anthony allegedly was proceeding in the opposite direction on motorcycle CJ511. It is the police's story that Anthony turned north into the path of the minibus in an attempt to cross into Back Circle Street, but because of the short distance, the bus collided with the motorcycle.
My son didn't rode on no part of no minibus. He drove into my son and killed my son. I saw this man at the hospital and I asked this man, "You the one who hit my son?" He didn't tell me my son riding, and a girl was standing at the lotto on the back road there. She saw everything. She even come with me to the hospital. She was in the same bus that hit him. And you know what? The man turned and said that, look what I just did. I just hit this guy down.
The police constable, identified as Ryan Prasad, had been driving the force's minibus under the influence of alcohol. Police said that after the impact, the father of one fell onto the roadway. Badly injured, he was rushed to the Georgetown Public Hospital, where he died.
In St. Lucia, Education Minister Dr. Gail Rigobert is blaming principals for the delay in school plant refurbishment, and that's following the long summer vacation. We get more in this report from HTS News Force.
Minister for Education Dr. Gail Rigobert has lauded the efforts by her ministry to ensure what she described has been a smooth commencement of the 2018-2019 academic year. On September 4th, the minister gave an account of her visits to several public schools, which included Miku Primary, V4 Primary, and Beanfield Secondary School, all of which underwent what she said was successful refurbishment works over the 6-week summer break. The education minister, however, did confirm receiving, in her words, late reports from other public schools which required repair work. She called out school principals for reportedly failing to update the education ministry on the needed repairs in a timely manner.
We sent out a circular, as we call it in the public service, to advise and invite principals to report infrastructural defects in their respective schools. We extended the deadline. Then I came to this very room and spoke to you, these very same personalities, and spoke to the principals through your media, encouraging them to report their defects as well. Would you believe that last week we were receiving information regarding infrastructural challenges at schools? Last week, that is the week before school reopens.
Meanwhile, the opposition pushed back at the education minister's finger pointing. They say the buck stops with her.
There are district education officers, there are principals, the district education officer is responsible for a district with all the principals. So if the principals did not send it, you have to hold them responsible. You also have to hold the district education officers responsible. You have to hold the chief education officer responsible because the minister is saying they did not send the list to her. Now this is becoming even more bizarre. The same way the minister is not responsible for the proposed salary increase at Sir Arthur Lewis. She said she didn't know anything about it. When will the Minister of Education accept responsibility for the education system?
The education minister did not identify the school principals who she accused of submitting late maintenance reports.
Well, sports is coming up next, but before we get to that, here's a tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
Across the Caribbean, brought to you by CIBC First Caribbean.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
After a hurricane and your property sustained damage, policyholders should have the damage assessed as quickly as possible and present an estimate for repairs or replacement to their insurance company. Cooperators General Insurance, helping you to be prepared this hurricane season.